All right, so we normally do some recap from last week, but we don't need to do that today. And so instead we're going to do recap from this morning for those of you who weren't there and for those of you who were there and kind of forgot. And so the next slide should be one of the questions that I want to pose to you guys and see what you guys have to say. Oh yeah, we're talking about discipleship and fellowship tonight, by the way. Yeah. All right, so we say words like discipleship and fellowship a lot at church. What do those mean? What did you guys talk about this morning? And if you weren't here, what do you think it means, Isaiah?
Well, fellowship is being like together with other people and unifying with each other, and discipleship is learning.
Okay, yeah, good. Anyone else? Something to add to Isaiah's pretty good definition? That does it? Yeah. So Miles said that discipleship is learning directly from Jesus, fellowship is learning from those around you. Yeah, those are both pretty good. I would posit that when Christians talk about discipleship, it's about learning from Jesus and learning to be more like Jesus. But it is also expanded even to someone else, right? If I was to begin discipling someone or be discipled by someone, that person would be someone older than me, most likely. So Caleb at one point discipled me, and he led me to Jesus through lots and lots of effort and patience. But yeah, I discipled under Caleb to Jesus, for Jesus. And so yeah, that's good. All right, the next question that I thought would be good to recap was a long one. And it's actually a recap of kind of my challenge to you guys at Winter Retreat. I want to follow up with things that I challenge you guys with. I don't know if you've noticed, but when I'm done talking at the end, I usually end with an application or a challenge for you. And that's only good. It's only worthwhile if you guys do it, right? And it's only worthwhile if we talk about what it was like to do it as well. And so I'm going to start doing this more often, is asking, how did this go? Have you been doing this yet? And so for those of you who weren't here for Winter Retreat, let's read this together. Winter Retreat, we were challenged to first think of a fruit of the Spirit to pray and grow in. For those of us who don't know, can someone list the fruits of the Spirit? Vanessa?
Like self-control, patience, kindness. There's more, but I just can't think them all.
Someone help her finish. Joanne, you were first. Yeah, it's a song. Yeah.
You do it with the hand drive.
Yeah, do it slower so that everyone... And do it louder so that everyone can hear it, because I can't even hear you.
Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control.
Hey, forgot gentleness.
No, you forgot gentleness, but that's okay. All right, so the point of this first application, the point of this first challenge was to identify one of those gifts, one of those fruits of the Spirit that you think you need growth in, and to begin praying with Jesus that he would help you grow in that area, that he would help you to love like he loves, help him to have patience like he is patient. Like that. Does that make sense? And so that was the first one. And the second one was to find someone and ask them how you can care for them or let someone care for you. This is important because we talked a lot about community and what it means to be a community and what that should look like. And a lot of that is love. And love is an action, like Caleb said, right? At Winter Retreat. And if we are loving someone, that means we need to be doing something for someone. We need to be with each other. And so my challenge was to find someone in your life that you can ask, hey, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And then to do that thing. And then the flip side of that was if someone comes to you and says, hey, do you need anything? To be honest and say, actually, yeah, I think I have something. And not to be closed off. And so to either help someone or to let someone help you. And kind of both, really. And so my question then is, has anyone had an opportunity to do that yet? Has anyone identified a fruit of the Spirit that they want growth in yet and begun praying about it? A couple of you? Awesome. How is that going? Have you guys seen any growth yet? It's okay if not. I'd encourage you to continue, but maybe. Has anyone been able to help someone? Yeah, Riley? You want to share about your experience? Doesn't matter. So he's doing better than those of you who were and didn't get the challenge, huh?
Hey.
So what's that? Do you want to share your experience? Would you be willing to?
Sure. There's one of my friends who
Mhm.
So I was like, yo, dude, it's gonna be okay.
No, that's huge. Yeah.
It wasn't just that, but like.
That's huge, though. You were encouraging him in a time of need. Yeah. Awesome. That's a great example. Thank you for sharing. Yeah?
I have a friend who at dance, and one of her friends, who's also one of my friends, basically hasn't been like talking to her and kind of ignoring her. So I told her that she should talk about how she's feeling about it, and maybe tell that person how she's feeling. So I was talking to her about that.
Nice. You're encouraging reconciliation. That's good. That's an important thing to do. Yeah. Aaron, you had a really good example this morning. Would you like to share it again or no? Yeah?
So a couple of days ago, my friend broke her arm, and I've been asking her every day if she needs any help with schoolwork or helping her carry her back.
Yeah. But those are just awesome ways to show people that you love them. And so continue looking for opportunities like that, you guys, and ask for it. And then we can talk about it together and hopefully be encouraged by the fact that we're doing things out there, that it's possible for us too to love people. And so, yeah. Thank you guys for following up with that, for doing that challenge. I encourage you guys to continue pursuing this. I'm going to do that, and I'll probably ask you guys again next week too. And hopefully we can hear from more of you. And for those of you who just heard it, identify fruit of the Spirit. I think that's a really big one. We all need God to change us, and it helps a lot when we ask Him for certain things to change within us. So, all right. That's all the recap, I believe, right? All right, so what we're going to start out with then is we're going to read John 13, 34 through 35. Can someone read this for me? Isaiah, go for it.
A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another.
Awesome. Okay, so the context of this is Jesus talking to his disciples, right? His 12 apostles. And he's saying, I'm giving you something new. And it's really not new. We've seen this actually before, earlier in his ministry as well. But it might be new to them hearing from him. He says, just as I've loved you, so just as you are loved by me, just as we are loved by God, you are to love one another, to love those around you, love your neighbor. And not only that, but by that love, people will know that you are my disciples. By that love that you have for one another, by those around you, people will know that you are with me. And so what that says for us Christians is that our identifier, our identity, should be in our love for Christ and our love for those around us. People should be able to look at us and say, yeah, that's a Christian because I've seen the way that they love people. That's a big deal. And so if we are to be, we are to be a community identified by love and devotion to Christ. Right? That's essentially what this is saying. And that's a big deal. And we talk about love a lot, and so I want to ask you guys, what kind of love is this and what does that look like? What kind of love is just as I loved you? And so, can you guys describe God's love for me? Everlasting love. Yeah. Anything else? Keep going. God is love, yeah.
More than we deserve.
Okay. Undeserved love. Fulfilling. Unconditional. Anyone else? What's God's love like? How would you describe it? The best? No, you're not wrong. Sacrificial? What does that mean, sacrificial love?
Well, Jesus, when he died, he sacrificed his own body for us.
So it can mean death for someone you love, but it can also mean putting them first, right? A sacrificial love is putting myself last, loving someone maybe even to my own detriment, to my own loss, right? I gain nothing from this love, active love that I'm doing, so it's to my own sacrifice. That's sacrificial love. And so if God is this kind of love, if we know that God has done this for us, then when Jesus says, just as I have loved you, you are to love one another, we're to emulate that love. We're to do that as well. And so our love should be unconditional. What does that mean? Never ending. Okay, yeah.
Not asking for something in return.
Not asking for something in return, not expecting anything. What else does unconditional love mean? Through hardship? Yeah. It means, what does the word unconditional mean? Do you guys know?
There's no conditions, you just do it.
Yeah, no conditions. You just do it. And so if someone, it doesn't matter who that person is, it doesn't matter what that person does to you. If they're your brother, if they're one another, if they're your neighbor, they're around you, you love them no matter what. And we know that God's love is all forgiving, and so we forgive, right? That's a big love. That's a love that, if we're being honest, we're not capable of doing, right? The only way we experience this love is through God. And in the same way, the only way that we can have this love for people, the only way that we can do this love through people, or for people, is through God, is with God's power. And so this is something that we need to be praying for. This is something that we need to be trusting in God to do through us. Does that make sense? And so I think kind of along the lines of that, praying for a spiritual gift, it's kind of like that. If you have someone who you're like, you know what, like I'm really struggling with this person, stop and pray for a second. Say, God, please help me to love this person right now. Because I really don't want to. They're being really annoying and I just want to hit them or, do whatever, right? Maybe you're not very violent and you just want to run away or something. But pray, stop and pray and say, God, please in this moment help me to love this person like you loved me. And reflect on that. And that's really what should be our identifiers. And so then point one I have is, if we as Christians are supposed to be a community easily identified by our love for one another and our devotion to Christ, what do we need to do to ensure that we resemble that? And my answer to that, will be on the screen, is to know and interact with one another and to seek Christ together. If we're going to love one another, we need to know one another. If we're going to love one another, we need to be with each other and interacting with one another, right? It's pretty hard for me to love you if you're never with me, right? If I never see you, I don't have very many opportunities. And so I need to see you. And so there's a commitment of presence there, but there's also a commitment to knowing. And I think this is something that we really struggle with lately, right? We have people around us a lot. Maybe you come here and you see these people a lot, right? We see each other every week, sometimes more than once a week. But do we really know one another? Can you say that the people around you, you know them really well, more than just their name, more than just the kind of inside jokes you might have from church? Do we know each other at that deep level? And we need to, if we're really going to embody this love. And that's fellowship, right? If we're coming together, earlier, I think it was Isaiah in our middle school group talked about congregation and how congregation just means coming together. And we got really stuck on that word for like 5 minutes because it's really applicable here, right? A congregation is kind of it's a synonym for church almost, right? Not even almost, it really is. It's in that word. And so what it means, though, is come together. And if we're going to have fellowship meant learning together. It meant being together, being with one another, relating with one another. We need to be here together. We need to know each other if we're going to have fellowship. And so this whole thing is really describing Christian fellowship. And that's love for one another that knows each other, that's with each other. And so now, let's jump to Romans 1, 11 through 12. Can someone read these two verses for me? Go for it, Canaan. Front row heroes again.
For I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you. That is, that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine.
Awesome. So this is Paul writing to the Church of Rome. He's trying to head up this missions trip to go through Rome into Italy, and so he's writing them a letter saying he didn't actually make this church. He usually writes the letters that we have are to churches that he created, that he planted. But this one he actually didn't plant. There's already people there. And so he's writing to them, one, to get to know them, so he can say, hey, I really want to come and meet you, and two, to get their help with Italy, so he can go through them, and so they can help them get there and make a church there. And so what is Paul's purpose right now? What is he saying right here? What is he longing to do? See them? And impart some spiritual gift to strengthen you for the purpose of mutual encouragement. Right? Does anyone know what spiritual gifts are? Probably all do, right? Mostly. What are spiritual gifts? Yeah.
God's giving you that maybe you're is naturally gifted at.
Something special that God has given you, and it usually leads you and the people around you closer to Him, right? Can someone give an example of a spiritual gift? Talking. Okay. Yeah.
Working with children.
Yeah. Both of those are kind of within like relating with one another. Singing can be a spiritual gift. Yeah. Can be. Preaching, yes. Preaching and teaching is one of the main kind of list of spiritual gifts. What else? Hospitality. What is hospitality, you guys? Do you know what that is?
Take someone in.
Taking someone in, caring for someone, right? Hosting them, kind of thing. Yeah, Jack? Yes, forgiveness. I think where you're pointing at is kind of like tongues, right? Tongues is a spiritual gift. So what Paul is saying here is that I long to be with you so that I can give you the gift that God has given me and share that with you so that it can strengthen you. And so for Paul right here, the purpose of coming together, the purpose of congregating, the purpose of church is sharing the gifts that God has given us with one another so that we can be strengthened by it. One of the purposes for coming together for fellowship is to strengthen one another's faith. It's to share what God has given us for other people's benefit, for each other's benefit. And then the next is that we can mutually encourage one another. And so, what are some spiritual gifts that you guys feel like you might have? Has anyone taken that test to see what spiritual gifts they've been gifted in? No?
It's just a BuzzFeed.
Yeah, there's all kinds of tests online that you can take. I think maybe what I'll do sometime is, there's probably a BuzzFeed one, but I wouldn't do the BuzzFeed one. I'd give you an actual one. I think what I'll do is I'm going to get a link to you guys so that we can take it.
You should make a Google Classroom.
I've never interacted with Google Classrooms, but judging by the response, I think that might be a bad idea.
Actually, kind of nice. It's better than one.
Okay. Either way, we're gonna. I think at some point we're gonna have an activity where we get to take that quiz together and learn what it is, because when we come together, an important part of coming together is sharing those gifts, is knowing our gifts, and having opportunities to use that gift for one another's benefit, right? To encourage one another. And so actually that's a really important first step for us right now, is to identify our spiritual gift. So even when you go home, don't worry about taking the test yet. If you can find it, cool, take it. That's great. But just even be praying and thinking about maybe something that God might have given you, a gift that He's given you, and how you can and already do share that. One of mine was very interesting was prophecy, and I have no idea how that translates to like modern day, because prophecy itself is a hard thing to identify and define. And so like one of my goals is to kind of figure out what this actually means right now and how I can do it. I have deja vu a lot, but I don't think that's what that means. It's not about seeing the future. Prophecy is about discerning the will of God and giving that to people. And so maybe that's just through the medium of preaching and teaching. But a huge part about knowing your spiritual gifts is, one, knowing it, and two, knowing how to use it for people and how to do it beneficially. And so that'll actually be our first application that I wasn't planning on doing, but that's kind of an application for me too, to enable you guys to identify your spiritual gifts. So I'm going to find a list. I'm going to find a survey, and if you guys can remember, try to remind me, all right? If I forget next week, to bring it to you guys. All right. So then that negates that conversation. So point 2 then that I have is, if our coming together is meant to be faith strengthening and encouraging, like Paul says here, what do we need to do to ensure that youth group is a place that resembles this? So what do we need to do as a youth group to make sure that when we come together, we are faith strengthening and mutually encouraging? So when we come together, we feel good about ourselves. We feel good about our faith with God, and that is stronger because we came together. Yeah? Do you have an idea?
Not be degrading.
Not be degrading, yeah. So in order to be encouraging, you have to not discourage people, really. Yeah. All right. What was my point that I said? Was what I said. Seek friendship, fellowship, and Christ with one another during youth group. And so to me, the most important part about this is response is, we might be able to do this pretty well outside of youth group with our friends and families, right? We might be actually doing this right now with other people that we know. But if we're not doing it during youth group's not going to look like that, is it? Yeah?
Do you put YG because that was easier or because that's cool?
Because it's easier, not because it's cool.
YG's a rapper.
Why can't you add an O behind the YG and then you got Yu-Gi-Oh?
No one likes
I don't watch Yu-Gi-Oh! And so
I love
yeah,
Yu-Gi-Oh.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, if anything, that was a mistake because I copy and pasted it from my personal notes. So I'm gonna fix that in the future
YG's
to avoid
a rapper,
this.
dude.
Huh?
YG's a rapper.
Is he?
Yeah, he's a blood.
Good to know, I guess.
Don't worry about it.
So, anyways, the important thing is if our youth group, if when we come together is gonna look like this, we have to be trying to do this here and now, right? We have to be making youth group all about being mutually encouraging and faith strengthening. And to some extent, it is that right now, right? When I teach you guys, right? When I bring something to give you from the Bible, I'm not doing it just because I like to talk for 30 minutes plus, right? I do like to talk, and it's kind of nice for me in that kind of way. But I'm doing it because I think that it will be helpful for you, and that it's a good thing to know, right? And so, yeah, that's faith strengthening. Faith strengthening. Wow. Yeah. But there's something to be said about you guys doing it with each other, right? It can't just be me doing it to you. It has to be us doing it for one another. So that has to happen here, and we have to start doing that together. And so, point 3 then. Christ had various forms of discipleship in place during his ministry, and his disciples consisted of the crowds that followed him, the 12 apostles, and then Peter, James, and John, his inner three, as I like to call it. And discipleship and fellowship works very similarly for us. We have our church, it's kind of the crowd. We have our youth group and friends, kind of the inner 12, you could say. And then we have those who are even closest to us, our best friends, or if you're already in the mentorship process or something like that, you have those who are closest to you who know you best. And so discipleship is a very important aspect of the Christian life, and it comes out in various ways. When we come to church, big church, and Sunday school and things like that, that is a form of discipleship and fellowship. These two are interconnected. Yeah?
Weren't there 14 apostles because Judas got replaced and then Paul?
Technically, yes. Within Jesus' ministry, he had the same 12. Until, yeah. So Jesus, were they given the title of apostle when they replaced him? I don't think so. Either way, 12 is a good number, right? 12 was an important number to them because it symbolized this smaller group that could work well together but wasn't too small or too big, right? So it was a good medium size. And discipleship works for us in our lives like that. We don't have to have 12 people following us to have a smaller group of discipleship. Our youth group, when we all come together like this, is a kind of a form of that, right? It's a group setting discipleship. It's not a crowd setting, it's a group setting. And so it's important to have that kind of community of discipleship. But it's also just as important, and I would say sometimes even more important, to have a small group form of discipleship. To have people around you, like 2 or 3 people who are really close to you who can help you and help strengthen you and help bring you closer to God intentionally, right? So this discipleship thing is really important because we learn it from Jesus, and he says, be like this, emulate this, have this in your lives, have this in the church. And these are some ways that we kind of have it already. And so I was going to spend some time to explain discipleship, but I'll do it really quickly for time's sake. Discipleship is a process of learning something intentionally. It's a system where you have one person kind of like teaching or experiencing with you to bring you to some end. And so within the context of Jesus, that's a mentor or a teacher, or even someone your age, who is purposely living with you and intentionally giving you things to help lead you to God, to help bring you closer to Christ. Yeah.
So are teachers disciples?
Hmm?
So are teachers at school disciples?
Yes. Not in a Christian context, but yes, they are discipling you. The Greek word mathetes for disciple means student. It means student. And so when you're learning, that's the discipleship process. It's a really important process that all of us go through no matter what, but it's especially important within Christianity because that's what brings us closer to God, that intentionality. And so really the main kind of point behind all of this talk about discipleship and fellowship is an application point that's not just for you, but for me. It's that when we come together for youth group, we are supposed to look like this. We need to look like this. We need to have discipleship and fellowship here. And this is the thing that our whole church is pushing for and pushing towards as a church, right? We've been talking a lot about discipleship and changing things to be more about people and less about programs. And that's on purpose. And I think we as a youth group need to embody that. And so my application and my challenge, I think it's on the next slide, is really for me. And that's for ESM to have stages where we are all together and separate. Let's see, I'll read it straight here. ESM needs to have stages where we are separate, but also where we are all together, so that we can begin to have deeper relationships with one another and better lead one another to Christ. Our main service needs to have that. If we're going to be doing this right, if we're going to be doing this in a way that really helps us come closer to God and helps us to have this form of discipleship and fellowship, we need to make some changes, right? I need to make some changes to what we do here, and you guys need to make some changes to why you're here and what you do when you come here, right? Your mindset matters. And so the first step that I'm doing to try to reach these goals, to try to make sure that we have fellowship and discipleship here, is to change something about youth group. And so next week, you guys can expect a change, all right? There's going to be something different. What we're going to do is we're going to add small groups. For those of you,
You're gonna wear a hat. Yeah.
You want me to wear a hat?
Yes, wear a hat. Have to. It's part of life. You have to wear a hat.
I look really bad at hats, but I'll bring a hat. I might bring a hat. Either way, that's not actually going to help with discipleship, right, boys?
Maybe.
What's going to help? All right, stop. What we need to do is we need to make our service look like this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm starting small groups with us. It's going to look a lot like Winter Retreat in that we're going to split up. We're going to still maintain this high school, middle school split, and we're going to split into genders as well. Okay? That's what I'm going to do in order to make sure that we are about fellowship and discipleship. Everything's going to look pretty much the same like it normally does. Tonight was a little special because we were low on leaders, but we're going to have the lesson is going to be with high school or with middle school at first, and then they'll go to discussion groups, and then they'll go to game after that. And then high school will start with a game, go to lesson, and then small groups. So really what I'll just need you guys to do is trust me and follow along and go with the leaders as they do things. But we're just adding one more shift so that we can have small groups together, so that we can actually interact with one another and get to know one another better and learn these things together. Yeah.
Is game time going to be shorter, or is the sermon going to be shorter?
Sermon. It's going to be a little bit shorter. And so the game time will be a tiny bit shorter as well.
The whole thing's going to be shorter?
No, we're still at the same time. Come at the same time, and we're ending at the same time. We're just fixing it around so that small groups are the main point of why we come together. All right? Maybe. And so what do I need from you guys before we're done? Before you guys to come, yes, to be committed to coming. That's important. What else?
Have the right mindset.
Right mindset. Yeah.
Be ready for change.
Ready for change. Have the right mindset.
Willing to share.
Yeah. Try it with us. Right. This is it. We're trying to do something together. Yeah, Isaiah.
Willingness to speak.
Willingness to speak. Yeah. When we come, huh? Yeah. And some of us need to be willing to let other people speak.
There we go.
Like my English.
And so, really, this isn't something that I can just do for you. This is something that I need you guys to help me with. And so I'm going to be doing what I can to make sure we're doing it, to enabling you to do it, but I need you guys to be on board with me and to try it with me. Can you guys do that? What's in it for you?
Fellowship.
Fellowship. You got better friends. You got a better relationship with Jesus. No ring. All right.
It could be 6 feet.
I'm going to pray, and then I pretty much lost you, so we're just going to go back downstairs, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, so everyone be quiet as I pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the chance to get together, Lord. We thank you for Edgewood and just this space. I thank you so much for everyone here and for everyone that couldn't make it today. I pray that as we pursue you more, as we pursue one another more, that you would be present here, that we would feel your presence, and that you would continue to fuel us with your love so that we can share that with others. I pray that you would help our mindsets as we begin this transition, that it wouldn't be too difficult, that it wouldn't be too different, but really would be extremely beneficial and even fun, maybe. I just pray that you would be with us, Lord, as we pursue you more. Help us to love you and one another more and more each day. In your name we pray. Amen.